The memory of that evening is etched into my mind like a photograph faded at the edges. I sat at the worn oak table in our cramped dining room, the dim glow of a single bulb casting shadows on the walls. In my hands was the satellite TV bill, its numbers glaring up at me. $189.73. My fingers trembled as I traced the figure, as if touching it could somehow make it smaller. The weight of it wasn't just in the paper. It was in the groceries we barely stretched to the end of the month, the rent that loomed like a storm cloud, the school supplies my kids needed, but I couldn't always afford. In the next room, my husband, Javier, leaned against the counter, his eyes glued to the flickering screen of our ancient television. A baseball game roared through the speakers, the announcer's voice a steady hum. Our two kids, Emma and Mateo, sprawled across the sagging couch, their laughter bubbling over a cartoon about talking animals. The sounds should have warmed me, should have felt like home. But all I felt was a knot in my chest, tight and unrelenting. Worry had become my shadow. How long can we keep this up? I whispered to myself, folding the bill in half. How long before we're drowning? Satellite TV had crept into our lives years ago, innocent at first. It was our escape after long days. Javier cheering for his team, Emma and Mateo giggling at their shows, me sinking into a weekend movie with them curled against me. Those moments were our glue, holding our little family together in this tired Chicago apartment. But the price kept climbing, a slow bleed we couldn't staunch. Every month I juggled numbers in my head, deciding what to skip. A new pair of shoes for Emma, a haircut for me, anything to keep us afloat. That night I carried the bill to the kitchen, where Javier was nursing a cup of coffee, the game's glow reflecting in his tired eyes. "Javier," I said, my voice sharper than I meant, "we can't keep paying this. It's almost $200. He looked at me, his jaw tight, the weight of his own long shifts at the warehouse etched into his face. "I know, Alina, but what do we do? The kids love their shows. I need my games. You love those old movies. It's all we've got after a day like today." His words stung because they were true. I wanted to save money, but I also wanted to see Emma's eyes light up at her favorite cartoon, to hear Javier's rare laugh when his team scored. I wanted those fleeting moments of joy. But the math didn't lie. We were stretched too thin. The next morning at the laundromat where I worked, I mentioned the bill to Rosa, a coworker with gray streaks in her hair and a knowing smile. She folded a towel and said, "We ditched satellite years ago. Switched to streaming. It's cheaper, Alina. You just need internet and a little device." "Streaming?" I asked, the word foreign on my tongue. She laughed softly. "It's TV through the internet. No big companies bleeding you dry. You can get a smart TV or something like a Fire Stick. It's simple." Her words sparked something in me, a flicker of hope, fragile but stubborn. When I got home, I told Javier. He leaned back in his chair, skeptical. "Sounds like a hassle. What if it's glitchy? What if we can't figure it out?" I pressed my lips together, fighting the urge to snap. "We have to try, Javier. We can't keep throwing money away." He shrugged, unconvinced, but I wasn't ready to let it go. That night after the kids were asleep, I opened our battered laptop, its fan wheezing like an old man. The screen's blue light bathed the dark room as I typed. How to cancel satellite TV. Affordable TV options. Streaming for beginners. Pages flooded the screen, articles, videos, reviews. Words like Roku, Hulu, and Smart TV swam in my head, technical and daunting. My English was decent, but this was a new language. I read slowly, piecing it together, my heart racing with a mix of fear and possibility. The next evening, I showed Javier my notes, scribbled on the back of an envelope. "Look," I said, pointing to the numbers. "We could save over $120 a month. That's groceries. That's new shoes for the kids." He studied the paper, his brow furrowed. "What if it doesn't work? What if the kids hate it? What if we lose the channels we like?" I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "We'll make it work. Please, Javier, trust me." He sighed, long and heavy, then nodded. "Fine, but this is on you, Alina." The responsibility settled on my shoulders like a heavy coat. I wasn't tech-savvy. My phone was the most advanced thing I owned, and even that confused me sometimes. But I thought of Emma's worn-out sneakers, Mateo's growing appetite, the dreams we tucked away to pay for just one more month of satellite. I had to do this. For a week, I spent every spare moment learning. At lunch breaks, I watched YouTube tutorials on my phone, squinting at the tiny screen. I asked questions at the electronics store, ignoring the clerk's smirk when I stumbled over terms like bandwidth. Rosa lent me a notepad to jot down tips. Slowly, the pieces came together: streaming devices, subscription plans, internet speeds. It wasn't easy, but I was doing it for them. On a chilly Saturday, we piled into our rattling minivan and drove to the electronics store. Emma and Mateo darted between aisles, their excitement contagious. I stood before a wall of TVs, their screens glowing like portals to another world. A sign read, "Smart TV, $299, $2 months of satellite bills." My hand shook as I touched the box. Javier whispered, "You sure about this?" I looked at him, then at our kids, their faces bright with curiosity. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I'm sure." We left with the TV and a small Amazon Fire Stick, a sleek black device that promised a new way to watch. At home, the kids tore into the box, the scent of fresh plastic filling the air. Javier and I wrestled the TV onto its stand, plugging in cords with clumsy hands. For a moment, the screen stayed dark and my stomach dropped. Javier's frown deepened. Then color. A menu bloomed, vibrant and overwhelming, with icons for Netflix, Hulu, and more. I gripped the remote, my palms slick, and pressed a button. The screen shifted, channels and shows appearing like magic. Emma squealed, Mateo clapped, and even Javier's lips twitched into a half-smile. That night we watched a Pixar movie, the kids nestled between us, the picture so clear it felt like we were in the story. Javier muttered, "Not bad," and I let out a breath I'd been holding for weeks. But I knew this was just the beginning. There'd be hiccups, internet outages, apps to learn, subscriptions to juggle. Still, as I watched my family laugh together, I felt a quiet pride. I'd taken the first step. I'd fought for us. The weeks that followed tested my patience. The internet lagged sometimes, pixelating Emma's cartoons. Javier grumbled when he couldn't find his sports channel right away. Mateo whined when a show buffered, but I stayed calm. Troubleshooting late into the night, calling Rosa for advice, tweaking settings until things worked. One evening, Javier sat beside me, his voice soft. "You did this, Alina. Look at the bill, $60, not $189. You were right. My below is the revised and extended version of the second part of your script, continuing the story from where you left off. I've kept the core narrative intact, but made significant changes to enhance the emotional depth, adjust the tone to be more vivid and reflective, and incorporate the name change to Emma, from Sophia, as established previously. I've also altered character dynamics, added new details to the setting, and introduced a few additional characters to enrich the story. The script is lengthened with more internal monologue, sensory details, and a new subplot to show the family's evolving dynamic and Alina's growing confidence. The focus remains on the transition from satellite TV to streaming, the family's struggles, and the unexpected benefits of change, while setting up the next step in their journey. Revised script continued. Sometimes I'd fumble with the remote, my fingers clumsy on the unfamiliar buttons, and the TV screen would go black, swallowing the room in silence. Javier's face would tighten, his voice sharp with frustration. "Satellite was so much easier, Alina. Why did we do this?" His words cut deep, like a knife twisting in an old wound. I wanted to snap back, to scream that I was trying, that I was carrying this burden for all of us. But I swallowed the anger, my throat tight, and whispered to myself, "This is for them. Keep going." One rainy afternoon, Mateo came to me, his small face crumpled with tears. "Mom, I can't find Paw Patrol," he said, his voice trembling. "Why did you take my show away?" His eyes, big and searching, broke something inside me. I knelt down, pulling him into a hug, his damp cheek pressed against mine. "We'll find something even better, Mijo," I promised, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "Just give me a little time." But as he shuffled away, I wondered if I'd made a mistake, if I'd traded their happiness for a few dollars saved. Yet every time I opened the new bill, $58, 21, not $189.73, I saw the truth. That money meant new sneakers for Emma, a backpack for Mateo, a week's worth of groceries without the gnawing fear of an empty fridge. It meant a sliver of breathing room in a life that felt like it was always closing in. The glitches, the complaints, the frozen screens, they were worth it, I told myself. They had to be. One Saturday, before the sun peeked through the blinds of our Chicago apartment, I woke early. The house was still, the only sound the faint drip of the kitchen faucet. I brewed a cup of chamomile tea, its steam curling in the cool morning air, and sat cross-legged on the living room floor, the new smart TV looming before me like a puzzle I was determined to solve. I clicked through menus, my brow furrowed, learning the logic of this strange new world. I added ESPN for Javier's baseball games, a kids' app for Mateo and Emma's cartoons, and a movie service for our Sunday nights. Each success felt like a small victory, a brick laid in the foundation of our new life. When the family stirred awake, I called them to the living room. "Look," I said, pointing to the screen, now alive with their favorite things. Emma clapped, her ponytail bouncing, and Mateo's eyes widened as he spotted a new cartoon. Javier's lips curved into a reluctant smile, the first I'd seen in weeks. "Not bad, Alina," he said, and I felt a warmth spread through me, fragile but real. But the change wasn't a straight path. The internet, temperamental as the Chicago weather, would slow to a crawl, pixelating Emma's princess show or cutting off Javier's game in the 9th inning. "This is garbage," he'd shout, tossing the remote onto the couch. Emma would pout, her arms crossed, muttering, "I hate this TV." I'd stand between them, my voice calm but my stomach churning, explaining that we just needed to wait to adjust. Inside, I felt like a tightrope walker, balancing their frustration against my resolve. One night, after another buffering fiasco, I sat alone in the dark, the apartment quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. The weight of their complaints pressed down on me. "Why is it always me?" I whispered into the shadows. "Why am I the one who has to fix everything?" But then I thought of the money we'd saved, $130 last month alone. I pictured Emma's new winter coat, red and warm, and Mateo's face when I bought him a soccer ball. I thought of the grocery bags, heavy with rice and beans, no longer rationed to the last grain. "It's worth it," I told myself, my voice barely audible. "It has to be." The next week I tried something new. I drew up a schedule, tapping it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a sunflower. "Javier, sports from 7 to 9 p.m., I said. "Emma, Mateo, cartoons after homework 4 to 6. They grumbled at first, Javier rolling his eyes, Emma whining about missing her show. But slowly the rhythm took hold. The fights grew quieter, the evenings less chaotic. One evening, Javier came home from the warehouse, his shoulders slumped, his work boots leaving faint dust on the floor. He opened his wallet, revealing a crumpled $5 bill and a few coins. He looked at me, his eyes heavy. "Alina," he said softly, "thank you. If we hadn't done this, we'd be borrowing money by now, maybe worse." His words wrapped around me like a warm blanket. I smiled, my voice steady. "We're in this together, Javier." But inside, I felt a spark of pride. For once, my effort wasn't invisible. The hard days didn't vanish. One weekend, the internet cut out entirely, leaving the TV a blank mirror reflecting our frustration. Emma stomped to her room, Mateo whined, and Javier called the provider, his voice rising as they promised a technician sometime tomorrow. I braced for their anger, expecting them to turn on me. But then Emma emerged, clutching a dusty box of Monopoly from under her bed. "Can we play this instead?" she asked, her voice shy but hopeful. Javier laughed, a rare, deep sound that filled the room. "Why not, Mija?" he said. We spread the board on the coffee table, the kids giggling as they fought over the top hat and the dog. For hours we played, trading fake money and teasing each other over bad rolls. Mateo's laughter echoed as he landed on boardwalk, and Javier's eyes crinkled with a warmth I hadn't seen in months. When we finally collapsed into bed, the TV forgotten, I realized something. This change had given us more than money. It had given us moments we hadn't known we were missing. The next morning, the technician arrived, a young man named Carlos with a quick smile and a toolbox. As he fiddled with the router, he chatted with me. "You're smart to switch to streaming," he said. "My mom did it last year, saved her a ton." His words bolstered me. A reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. When the internet flickered back to life, Mateo ran to the TV, then paused. "Can we play Monopoly again tonight, Mom?" he asked. My heart swelled. "Of course, Mijo," I said, ruffling his hair. That Sunday, I decided to use some of the savings. I bundled Emma and Mateo into their coats and took them to Lincoln Park, the air crisp with the promise of winter. We bought ice cream from a cart, chocolate for Mateo, strawberry for Emma, and their laughter rang out as they chased each other around the playground. I sat on a bench, the cold seeping through my jeans, and watched them, their joy a quiet answer to my doubts. This is what matters, I thought. Not the satellite dish, not the endless channels, but this. On the walk home, Emma slipped her small hand into mine. "Mom, I like the new TV," she said, her voice soft. "It's different, but it's fun." Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them away, squeezing her hand. "I'm glad, sweetheart," I said. Javier, though, still had moments of longing. "I miss having all the games at my fingertips," he admitted one night, staring at the TV as a commercial played. I nodded, my heart heavy for him. "I know, but we're doing what we can." He sighed, then reached for my hand, his calloused fingers warm against mine. "I'm sorry I've been hard on you," he said. "You're doing your best, I'll try to be better." His apology, simple and raw, lifted a weight I'd carried alone for too long. The kids adapted faster than I expected. Emma discovered a new show about space adventures, her eyes glued to the screen as she learned to navigate the apps. Mateo proudly showed me how to search for his cartoons, his small fingers deft on the remote. "Look, Mom, I'm teaching you now," he said, grinning. I laughed, pulling him into a hug. "You're a pro, kiddo." But fear still lingered, a quiet hum beneath my pride. What if streaming prices climbed, just like satellite had? What if our internet plan changed, or the savings weren't enough? At night, I'd lie awake, the city's hum filtering through the window, and pray for strength, for stability, for my family to stay whole. Then came a moment that shifted something in me. One evening, as we ate dinner, rice, beans, and chicken I'd stretched to feed us for days, Javier looked around the table. Emma was telling a story about school, her hands waving, and Mateo was sneaking an extra spoonful of rice. Javier's eyes met mine, and he smiled, a real one this time. "We're doing okay, Alina," he said. "We're saving money and we're still us. You made that happen." I swallowed hard, my fork still in my hand. "We made it happen," I said, but inside I felt a new strength. I wasn't just a mother or a wife. I was the one who'd faced the unknown, who'd learned and fought and stood firm. I'd carved a path for us, and it was leading somewhere better. The next step wasn't just about keeping the TV running. It was about building on this change, finding more ways to stretch our dollars, to give Emma and Mateo a future beyond these walls. I started researching other savings, cutting the electric bill, finding free community events, maybe even a side hustle. Rosa had mentioned selling handmade crafts online, and the idea sparked something in me. I'd always been good with a needle, stitching clothes for the kids when money was tight. Could I turn that into something more? One night, as the kids slept and Javier watched a late game, I pulled out the laptop again. The screen's glow lit my face as I typed, "How to start an online craft business." The pages loaded, full of possibilities, and I felt that familiar mix of fear and hope. This was the next step, not just surviving, but dreaming a little bigger for my family. Throat tightened, but I smiled. "I did it for us." Javier's words lingered in the air, warm and steady, as we sat at the kitchen table one evening. "This is because of you, Alina," he said, his voice softer than I'd heard in years. Emma and Mateo looked up from their plates, their faces bright with smiles that mirrored the flickering light of the candle I'd lit to save on electricity. In that moment, the weight of all those sleepless nights, all those battles with the remote and the internet, felt worth it. The ache of doubt was replaced by a quiet certainty. We were finding our way. The first months after cutting the satellite dish were a storm of adjustments. Javier would grumble about missing his late-night baseball recaps, his voice heavy with nostalgia. "Not every game on these apps," he'd say, slumping into the couch. Emma would pout, her small voice sharp. "Where's my princess show, Mom?" Mateo, ever curious, would fiddle with the fire stick, muttering, "This TV's weird." Their complaints stung, but I met each one with a patience I didn't always feel. Inside, I was exhausted, my resolve stretched thin, but giving up wasn't an option. I was fighting for more than a screen, I was fighting for us. Slowly, we carved out new routines. I set rules to keep the peace, scribbled on a piece of paper taped to the fridge. Javier's sports from 7 to 9 p.m., Emma and Mateo's cartoons after homework, family movies on Sunday nights. At first, they resisted, Emma rolling her eyes, Mateo sneaking extra TV time. But over time, the rules became a rhythm, like the hum of the city outside our window. The shouting that once filled our apartment faded, replaced by moments of quiet understanding. The internet, though, remained our unpredictable foe. On a stormy evening, as rain lashed the windows, the TV froze mid-movie, the screen a mosaic of pixels. Emma wailed, Mateo threw his hands up, and Javier stood, his voice sharp. "This never happened with satellite, Alina. Never." His words landed like a punch, and for a moment I wanted to crumble to let the tears spill. Instead, I stood, my hands trembling but my voice firm. "We're saving money, Javier. That's why we did this." "For the kids, for us." He looked away, his jaw tight, but he didn't argue. I held on to that silence like a lifeline. The next morning, I woke before dawn, the apartment still cloaked in gray. I brewed coffee, its bitter aroma filling the kitchen, and stared out at the rain-slicked street below. Had I made things harder? Had I traded their comfort for a few dollars? But then I thought of Mateo's new soccer cleats, scuffed but proudly worn. I thought of Emma's red coat, keeping her warm through Chicago's biting winter. I thought of the bank account, no longer bleeding dry by month's end. Those truths steadied me, gave me the courage to keep going. One Saturday, the internet betrayed us again, cutting out for an entire day. Emma begged for her cartoons, Mateo whined for his animal show, and Javier wanted the news, his frustration simmering. I called the provider, my voice tight as they promised a fix by tomorrow. I braced for another night of anger, picturing their glares pinned on me. But then Emma ran to her room and returned with a jigsaw puzzle, its box faded from years under her bed. "Can we do this instead?" she asked, her eyes hopeful. Mateo plopped down beside her, sorting pieces with eager hands. Javier hesitated, then joined them, his calloused fingers fumbling with the tiny cardboard shapes. At first, they worked in silence, the only sound the patter of rain outside. Then Mateo giggled as he fit a corner piece, and Emma teased Javier for mixing up the sky with the sea. Hours slipped by, the TV forgotten, and when we went to bed, our laughter lingered in the air. I realized then that losing the screen, even for a night, had given us something richer, each other. Over the months, I stretched our savings into small, meaningful things. I bought fresh apples and oranges, not just rice and beans. I paid for Mateo's school field trip to the planetarium, his eyes wide as he recounted the stars. For the first time in years, I bought myself a pair of boots, simple but sturdy, and felt a flicker of pride as I laced them up. Javier noticed, his voice quiet one evening. "You were right, Alina. This change, it's letting us live a little." His words lifted me, light as a breeze, and I felt the knot in my chest loosen. The kids grew in ways I hadn't expected. Emma mastered the Fire Stick, her small fingers flying across the remote to find new shows about space and adventure. Mateo discovered a science series, narrating facts about whales and volcanoes with a grin. One evening, they sat me down and showed me how to search for movies, their voices overlapping with excitement. "See, Mom, it's easy," Emma said, and I laughed, pulling them close. "You're teaching me now," I said, my heart full. It wasn't just TV anymore. It was a window to learning, to growth, and I was proud to watch them through it. One night, Javier came home from the warehouse, his face lined with exhaustion. He set his bag down, the zipper scraping against the quiet, and looked around the kitchen. The table held a simple meal, chicken, rice, a salad I'd splurged on with our savings. Emma and Mateo were giggling over a joke, the TV off for once. Javier's eyes met mine, and he said, "I used to think satellite was everything, but this is better. We're okay, Alina." I smiled, my voice soft but steady. "We're stronger now." Fear still crept in, especially when I read online about streaming prices creeping up, a shadow of the satellite bills we'd escaped. What if this solution became another trap? What if we couldn't keep up? Those thoughts kept me awake, the city's hum a restless companion. But then I'd remember how we'd faced this before, how I'd faced it. If I did it once, I told myself, I can do it again. For the first time, I believed in my own strength, not just as a mother or a wife, but as a woman who could solve problems, who could lead. One crisp fall weekend, I decided to use our savings for something special. Instead of a lake trip, I took the family to the Chicago Harvest Festival, a local event I'd seen flyers for at the laundromat. We packed a picnic, sandwiches, apples, a thermos of hot chocolate, and joined the crowds at the park. The air smelled of cider and fallen leaves, and music drifted from a stage where a band played. Emma and Mateo ran to the face-painting booth, returning with glittering stars on their cheeks. Javier and I walked behind them, our hands brushing, watching as they darted through the festival's glow. At one point, we stopped at a craft stall, where a woman named Maria sold handmade scarves and blankets, her fingers quick as she explained her work. "I started this online," she said, her smile warm. "It's extra money for my kids." Her words sparked something in me, a seed planted from my late-night research into selling crafts. I bought a small scarf for Emma, its blue threads soft against my fingers, and thought maybe I could do this too. That evening, as we sat on a blanket under the festival lights, Javier turned to me. "This is better than any game on TV," he said, his voice low but certain. Emma and Mateo, their faces sticky with cotton candy, nodded in agreement. I looked at them, my family, and felt every struggle, every frozen screen, every argument, every moment of doubt melt away. The sacrifice had been worth it. The festival wasn't just a day out. It changed how my family saw me. At work, Rosa overheard Mateo telling a friend at the laundromat, "My mom figured out how to save our money." His small voice carried a pride that filled my chest. One night, as I tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at me, her eyes bright. "You're really smart, Mom," she said. Those words, simple and true, were worth more than any paycheck, any bill paid. As the months stretched into a year, our life settled into a new normal. The bills were manageable, our hearts lighter. The fear of month's end no longer loomed like a shadow. Arguments were fewer, replaced by evenings of laughter and shared stories. The TV, once the center of our home, became just one part of it, a tool we controlled, not one that controlled us. One Sunday, after a year of streaming, we gathered in the living room for movie night. The kids chose a comedy, and as the opening credits rolled, I looked at them, Javier's arm around Mateo, Emma curled against me, the room warm with their laughter. I thought back to that evening a year ago when I'd held the satellite bill, its numbers a weight I thought I'd never lift. That fear was gone now, replaced by a quiet pride. We were safe. We were together. And that was enough. But the story didn't end there. Inspired by Maria at the festival, I began sewing again, late at night when the apartment was quiet. I made scarves, simple but colorful, stitching dreams into every thread. One evening, I showed Javier a website I'd built with Rosa's help, a page to sell my work online. "Look," I said, my voice trembling with excitement. "This could be something." He studied the screen, then pulled me close. "You keep surprising me, Alina," he said, his smile wide. The next morning, I listed my first scarf, my heart racing as I clicked publish. It wasn't just about the money. It was about building something of my own, about showing Emma and Mateo that their mom could dream too. As I watched them play in the living room, the TV humming softly in the background, I felt a new chapter opening. We cut the satellite dish, but we'd gained so much more. A stronger family, a braver me, and a future we could shape together.